right, so before we learn how to tie a knot, it's really important to know the terminology. Knot tying is complex, and a lot of times people forget about how to tie knots or have a hard time learning how to tie knots because they don't know under the terminology and they can't share the types of movements or the things that you need to do with the ropes in order to get the outcome of the knot. So let's talk a little bit about the different types of knot terminology so that when we get into knot tying, you have a very clear and understanding of what you're doing with that rope. So the very first thing is the end of the rope that you're working with is the working end, or oftentimes it's often referred to as the running end. The other end of the rope that you're not using, let's say if I'm just going to tie a simple overhand knot like this, that is the running end or the working end. All right, that's the end that I'm working with. Everything else is the standing end. It's all standing still. We don't have to worry about that. So this is the working end of the rope. Oftentimes we need to bend the rope, and when we do that, we bend it in a shape like this. This is what's called a bite. All right, very similar to a bite is a loop, and that's when. So a bite is when the working end and the standing end run parallel. A loop is when the working end goes over the standing end, and that is what's called an overhand loop. Now you can also have an underhand loop. When you go like this. This is going to become important when you're learning some knots to know whether you need an underhand or an overhand loop. So when a piece of rope runs over something like this dowel, then what we have is a turn. And then when that rope comes around again, that working end goes around so that it's parallel to that dowel, if you can see. That is what's called a round turn. So it's like two loops around that dowel. And then one thing that I had forgotten is when we talk about the bite, when the working end goes over around the standing end like this to create what's a figure eight, is oftentimes referred to as a figure eight. That's what's called an elbow. So a lot of times people will call that a figure eight because of the shape. So that's just another one as well. All right, so that is your rope terminology.